You're
Oh,
live.
yay!
Yay.
That was fast.
Compared to a while ago.
We had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning. These are always interesting.
Mhm.
All right. Well, welcome to Braveheart Conversations. I am Jillian Aurora, and this is my lovely co-host, Marie Wallace.
Good morning.
We are super excited to be here with you this morning, as always. And we have been discussing our harvest, right? Since it's fall, it's this time of year where we are gleaning everything that we have planted over the year. And just like in the garden, we have our harvest. We have all of the yummy veggies and things to put up for the winter. We can also extrapolate that analogy to our lives and the experiences that we've had. And we've planted a lot of things over the year, not just in green leafy form, but also, emotionally and intellectually and in our relationships. And so we've really taken some time this month to really discuss, what have we learned? What resiliency are we walking away with? What wisdom have we gained, and how do we celebrate that? Last week we kind of talked a little bit about the things that were difficult challenges, right? The things that we overcame. And this week, I want to talk about the things that we learned. What knowledge did we take away from this year? Are we taking away from this year? And it's still unfolding, but in many ways, I feel like this time of year is a very reflective time of year. This is a great time to look at the things that need to be released, look at the things that need to end, look at what we've gained. And as with anything, right, there's a time where you are in relationship with someone or something and you're feeding each other and you have this cycle going, and then at some point that will sometimes resolve, right? And this is the time of year to evaluate, what are the things that I can still keep gleaning and I can still keep giving and taking, and then there are some things that it's time to release them. We've gotten everything that we can from this relationship, and now it's time to let it go and move forward. So there's a lot happening at this time of year, at this stage in the harvest cycle. And so I want to really just acknowledge that in these episodes that we're doing these past couple of weeks and now. And we're coming to the end of, I think grief is next in our next month's worth of content, because it's that letting go and honoring of that. That time to just release, just like the trees release their leaves. But before we do that, I want to fully acknowledge everything we've gained.
Mhm.
So, Marie, what do you think about, like, what for you is the biggest takeaway from this year? What's the biggest learning experience? Or a couple, it's hard to pick the one because I don't know if we can say there is a one.
I might need a minute because I haven't done my little reflecting as like I usually do. Mostly, I think letting go of things that don't serve me any longer is probably, it's an ongoing one. It's just going, okay. I think with some of the things that happened with COVID and the political scheme and all of that, is just learning a new way of being, being able to be more flexible, finding ways to engage differently with people. There was some letting go of certain relationships, and it doesn't mean that those relationships are permanently gone, but maybe that they'll cycle back through, just like our plants that we were talking about. They'll come back to me. So I'll kind of reflect on it for a minute and see, but for the most part, it's just learning new ways. The pearls that came from the big changes that happened
Mhm.
this last year and a half. I imagine that that's some of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
How about for you?
I think, you know, there's a lot that I continue to learn, just like we talked about the layers of the onion. But I know, a pattern for me has been being too tenacious, right? And
Mm,
I've literally written courses about, when to get hopeless, when to let things go. And and I talk about the experiences I've had in relationships where I have just hung on and kept hoping that things would change and um
believing the best in people.
yeah, and really allowing something that wasn't working to just keep going because I just really, really hoped that someday it would work.
Mm,
And although I'm really aware of that happening in my relationships, and I really don't allow that to happen in my relationships, I have really identified over this last year where I'm doing that in other areas of my life where, there's maybe strategies that I've implemented or business ideas or um, you know, any of the big passions I have in my life that
mhm.
I have allowed things to just like keep trying the same thing over and over and over and
Yeah.
expecting different results, right?
Yes. I'm guilty of that.
So that's been a really big takeaway for me is learning to really truly let things go and not be afraid to let them go. I also think, kind of piggybacking on what we talked about last week, um, I've learned a lot of clarity because of what has happened,
Mhm.
with COVID and just opinions in general. There's so many of them. It's really shed a light on my lingering people pleasing, right? It can be really hard to have conflict online. It can be
Mhm.
hard to know that I'm going to be called names and I'm going to be probably misunderstood and to still say it anyway. Um,
Villainized, yeah.
And so that's been a real practice to keep doing is being authentic
Yeah.
and true to me, even though other people, likely on every side of the spectrum, is going to dislike what I have to say.
And
That
being
that's
okay with it.
yeah, that's been a big lesson for me. I also think, um, you know, I in periods like this where there's a lot of polarization and if you allow your journey to continue to take you towards the truth despite losing whatever you're going to lose, there's a very legitimate period of loneliness.
Yeah.
And so I can feel that. I can feel the isolation because there's been a lot that has shifted and changed, and I can feel, the people in my life who, many of them just acquaintances.
Sure.
I can feel the shift where um I was just another person in the community to now it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if, she's a little out there, and that can feel isolating. That can
Mhm.
feel, but it can also be empowering
Very
because
liberating.
you know that you're being true to yourself, and there's
Mhm.
a special, unique power in that. No matter um, no matter what the loss is, that I think is more
Mhm.
important to me than anything else. But there's still that like purifying fire, if you will, that burns away everything that is just
No
not.
longer serving.
Yeah.
That really, kinda, opened up some things for me too. Just I think living that authentic life is something that's important for both you and I, and I think that's one thing that we have together, and it's that, um there is such sweet satisfaction to go, yeah, I feel like I'm actually being authentic and living my life. And it is so lonely. People have no idea
Mhm.
how lonely, even if there's someone cheering you in the background, you may not be
Mhm.
aware of it because being in alignment with you they aren't ready for that isolation or
Yeah.
the crucifying
Yeah.
comments and things that happen. And it is a very lonely space, and I've been there. But what you said that really triggered something for me is letting go of ideas and
Mm.
those things that you were really like. For me, I have some passionate projects that were like, I just really, really love it. I know it's a good project, and maybe it's just not time yet, or
Mhm.
maybe it doesn't have the same um, enthusiasm that I have, and it's disappointing. And you're going, but it's such a good project. It's such a good thing that gets me, going and stuff. And so if I just try a little harder, it's gonna work this time. And I think for me, I've had a lot of experience letting go of people, but not so much ideas and
Mhm.
projects that may need to be laid to rest.
Yeah.
Because it's not moving in the same direction as I'm moving, because we grow and expand in new avenues, and we go, oh, so just it also helps with discernment for me,
Mhm.
like knowing, letting go of these things over here that may not be going in the same direction as I do. It helps me be discerning on what is
Yeah.
important and what's not, and then putting more time and energy into those things that are going in the same.
Yeah.
It helps me flow better. I think that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Um, I think it's been a challenge for me to finally this year realize that I can maintain the passions, my purpose, that my calling that I feel is
Sure.
so heart centered, that doesn't change, but it can
The
definitely
delivery.
change. Yeah, the manifestation of it can. And, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, clarifying for me is recently having the epiphany that my title really isn't coach. I have identified as a women's coach for a very long time, and it took a while to chip away at that title and realize that is just not it's not a good fitting label for me. Maybe it was at one time, but it's not now. And I really realized that the people that were the most influential in my life were authors and people doing this, people having honest conversations online, people sharing their stories that were really brave to do so and really flew in the
Mm.
face of what they were supposed to do, and
Yeah.
difficult women. And a lot of them, they don't hold the title of coach. They are just sharing their story or their knowledge through books, and for me, it's also through courses. But that was a really big shift for me, and so it's not that I'm letting go of who I am and what my passion is, but it is more clearly labeling it, more clearly defining it, more clearly knowing how to manifest or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, deliver that to the world.
Mhm. Broadening the delivery.
Hmm.
Hmm. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because there's not really a label that encompasses the breadth
Hmm.
of the work that we do.
Yeah. And I started to find, for me, coach felt more limiting than it did
Hmm.
freeing. So, yeah, that's been a huge takeaway for me this year. And I want
How
to make
did you
sure.
feel about that, though?
Yeah,
How do you feel now?
feels really good. It actually feels like I have more options
Hmm.
because I saw coaching as delivered in a way. Coaches
Yes.
do certain things, and there can be private coaching, there can be group coaching, there can be courses,
Mhm.
right? That those are the
Right.
deliver coaching. And some coaches will write a book, but it's made as a draw to get back into coaching,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And for me, I realized that I love, love, love learning. Like
Mhm.
I'm constantly reading books, listening to podcasts. I love
Mhm.
scholarship. I just love being in knowledge. I will
That's
choose.
why we're friends.
Yeah,
Learning is like this consuming
it
thing. Yeah,
is
that's why we're.
all the time. And some people might say that's unhealthy, but like it's just a hobby. I love it to me. So I'm the weirdo that will choose a documentary over other movies, and it's like my favorite thing on the weekends to do my house cleaning and have
Mhm.
documentaries playing all day long. So I realized about myself, instead of being so dogmatic, and I guess this is the key here, is when we hold on to ideas so strongly that we can't look at something outside the box,
Where
then
it's
sometimes
limiting.
we put ourselves in a prison. But I realized all of the things that I loved so much, all of the knowledge, none of that was coming from coaches. Not at all that I would downplay coaching,
Sure.
because I've spent thousands of dollars on
Yeah, me
coaching,
too.
and I think it has been life changing. I very much appreciate everything that I've gained from my coaches.
And it's
And
still an aspect of what you do.
it is, yeah.
Mhm.
But I also realized that most of the time, for me in particular, it was hindering what I really wanted to do, which is really knowledge creation.
Mm.
It is, I almost feel frustrated or annoyed when I have people um, wanting to engage, when I'm like, but I'm trying to write this, or I'm trying to create this course, or like it's almost like it's pulling me away from what I really want to do.
Mm.
So that's a really big indicator to me that perhaps, coaching is not, maybe it's the other way around for me, right? Because coaches will use a book to direct their coaching. Maybe it's the other way around, and coaching is really meant to direct my book. Um, because I have a lot of written words to share,
You
and
do.
that's my passion and gifting, is to put my ideas into written words, and I'm able to really clearly
She
do
is.
that.
She's really good at it.
I
Yeah.
love it, and I don't get writer's block. It just flows, and so that's what I really want to be doing. So that was a really big light bulb for me.
Mm.
um, and also just the fact that I am such a voracious reader. I realized that's the league I want to be in. That's the league I want to play in. And I also realized I had a lot of limiting beliefs around writing books, and that you couldn't make any money doing that. I've been told that story for a long time. Authors don't make money. You have to do something else because, that's not dependable. You're actually going to spend more money on writing a book than actually making money. I've had all this stuff, all the you can't because, and
We've all heard that too.
yeah, and I've coached people out of those pitfalls before. So it's funny,
Right.
it takes what it takes. But I mean, how many times have I had a client say, well, I can't do what I really want to do because, and like, that is always bullshit.
Right.
Like 100% of the time. I've had clients tell me they can't move overseas where they really want to pursue the career that they've always wanted to pursue because, of
Your
whatever
why's not
reason.
strong enough.
And now, 3, 4 years later, they've been living happily in another country, doing what they love and can't imagine anything, so it's really applying those same principles that I've preached for a long time to myself. And it may be true that there are some people who write books and don't make money, but
Right.
that isn't the story for everyone.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's a long
No, it was wonderful. I
rabbit
love
trail.
it. These
Um,
are the kind of conversations that I enjoy too, which is why we've been doing this over 2 years,
yes,
is because it's that food for thought. And I had someone say something to me this week like, oh, I guess we're not supposed to question. And I go, no, questioning is the perfect thing to do. Then you know
yes,
what you're thinking, you know what your um, moving towards it, you to be more discerning
Mhm.
and really be convicted about something, or really go, not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to cover something. I also wanted to make sure that I'm not dipping into next week's
Oh, okay.
topic. So next week's topic is celebrating the new self. But one thing that I really wanted to address here is how important it is to acknowledge the earmarks, right? The changes,
Mhm.
and celebrate them, and like do
Mhm.
something that is not just, oh hey, I accomplished this,
Yeah.
but, we've touched on this in the past, but literally throwing yourself a party, doing something, an event that truly acknowledges and celebrates
Mhm.
what you've done and how you've, shed your cocoon or whatever the new thing is. Like this last year, I had my name change
I
ceremony. That
know,
was
that
a
was so
really
cool.
big event for me, and I'm really glad that I put that literally on my calendar, and
Mhm.
I made that a party for me. And we have not been trained to do that. We have not been.
It's to be goal oriented and move to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And we forget to celebrate. I've been so
Mhm,
guilty of that, and just keeping my calendar so full, which is also something I learned from COVID, is to slow down and appreciate and
mhm.
cultivate all those wonderful lessons, even in like the tough stuff,
Yeah.
right? The traumas and the difficult things. So I'm glad you did that too. It gives you a memory to hold on to and an experience that says, look at this, I've evolved.
Yeah, and it really would not feel as meaningful if I hadn't really carved out not only the time, but there's intention that is involved in creating an event, right? So
Mhm.
I I had invited friends, and Marie is amazing at doing ceremonies, and
Well,
so
thank
she
you.
did an anointing ceremony for me, which was really special and sacred. And I went and I bought myself a whole bunch of food that I don't even normally like. I'm not a huge fruit eater, but I went to Costco, and there were these big, gorgeous grapes, and there were, these just
Mhm.
colorful foods. And
Dressed like a
I
goddess.
made I made this big spread like it was, a feast that you would see
Oh,
in a,
yeah.
um, I don't know, an old royal table. It felt very royal to me. It felt very special.
Luxurious and fun.
And gosh, I think I wore a little crown.
I
Yeah.
know, it was so pretty. I was just and it and for the rest of us, it was so sacred to be a part. So inviting those people that it creates meaning for them too, is like,
Mhm.
look at this woman who's embraced it. Identity is not is too small of a word, just embracing more aspects of yourself.
It
And
was a reclamation of my identity
there we
because it
go.
was my name. And so,
And you
um,
chose it.
right, I've always, like most women, we don't even think about the fact that most of us have names that have just been claimed by someone else.
Mhm.
They're generally it's a male last name. So, I had my biological father's name, and he left when I was really young. And then I had my adopted father's name, and I have never had a great relationship with him either. Then I had my ex-husband's name, and that ended poorly. And even if it hadn't, the idea is it's still someone else's identity. It's still
Mhm.
not mine. And so to actually take the time to find the name that resonated for me, to choose it, it was such a significant event in reclaiming me and reclaiming my identity, and saying, my identity is not based on someone else, it is on me.
Mhm.
Um, and then, so many aspects of that, there was the event, there was, for me, it was really researching the name and giving all of the history and, um, the context behind the name Aurora for me. And then, even the week up to that, I bought myself jewelry,
Aw,
lingerie. I made it a sacred, special event. Um, I pulled a card that was a goddess Aurora. Just bringing and tying all of those pieces that really
creating meaning too.
solidified that event, and it'll forever be an anniversary, right?
Mm,
And that's one of the things I teach in some of my courses as well, is that we don't treat ourselves the same way that we treat a marriage.
mm.
The sacredness of ourselves and our autonomy, it's just as important, if not more important, than a marriage vow.
Mhm.
And how cool would it be to have a ceremony in a vow to yourself, right? That you take just as seriously as a vow that you make to someone in marriage. Um, so I think there's so much value in ritual. There's so much value in, um,
I second that motion.
and you're kind of the queen of
I love
rituals and
it's just
ceremonies. Yeah.
it's creating meaning and markers, like you said,
Memory.
memories and markers along the way to come back, and because life is going to get tough, and it's an indicator of or a marker of the resiliency and the things that you've overcome, but also the things that you've created for yourself. And um, let's see, I don't know what the word is, but it's a juicy word that just means I'm embracing all the greatness of my life, those
Mhm.
things that I've created, and as well as those things that I've overcome. And yeah, I just think that that was one of the most beautiful ceremonies to be a witness and to be inspired by, because then I go, I I actually have a name that I'm wanting to embrace at some point. And I want to say one more thing about this particular occasion, because I imagine we'll probably move past, and hopefully this is okay with you. But
Mhm.
there were lots of things said about this particular ceremony as far as changing your name, and if we're daring to break down patriarchy and culture and things that are just not quite right, it is there, it's the word I want to say is there were people that actually said she's crazy, right? I mean, and I'm sure you heard even worse than crazy, but like, what's wrong with Jillian? She's gone off the deep end. And there's these things that I heard, and I don't know if we've ever even talked about that. And I go, but you don't know the whole story, which is what we can say true of everyone's life, but you don't know the whole story about the why. Was one of the most beautiful things to witness, someone reclaiming themselves and their name and their identity and all the things, and broadening what her name means
Mhm.
versus the things that we were handed down. Will those other names still be a piece and a
Mhm.
part of her? Always.
Mhm.
But this is just more encompassing of you. I just wanted to address
Yeah.
that part. People will call you
Oh,
crazy.
yeah.
People will say worse things than that.
Well,
And
anyone who chooses to break the norms and do something outside of what everyone else is doing is going to be called crazy.
which is the unapologetic part of living your
Exactly.
life.
And, that is how we create new norms. And I will also say, I can't take credit for this piece, but I really love the fact that throughout that whole ceremony and that, changing my name and all of this, I had a partner who was very supportive of it. He never was like, oh, that's crazy, or, you can't have your own name. Um,
Yeah.
that it wasn't a thing, and so I love that so much of my story, I hope, will give other people some hope,
Mhm.
because there's such a
Inspiring. It's very inspiring.
and there can be such a disbelief that you can find a partner who really supports your own autonomy, that you can
Mhm.
find a partner who really um, respects you being an individual and
Mhm.
not just, them. Your identity has to be them. right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of ways that, people can call me crazy, that's fine. But I also think in that crazy, there's so much just beauty that many people won't get to experience because they're not willing to look crazy.
Mhm.
Um, but it just really was such a special ceremony, and I want to, tie back to, um, it can be it can be something that you feel silly and
Could be
superficial,
small. Yeah.
right? I'm celebrating myself. Like this is,
Yeah.
you know, it can feel over the top. It can feel dramatic because we aren't taught that it's okay to
To
celebrate
celebrate ourselves.
ourselves
Yeah.
unless it's, some big achievement like, oh, I got a college degree, right? Then you're allowed to celebrate those things. But I wish that we made it more normal, more
Mhm.
normalized to just celebrate the small things.
There's a book called it's a children's book, actually, and I think there's so much to learn from children's book because it's small, but it's called I'm in Charge of Celebrations.
Mm.
And she's a young girl who lives out in the desert, and she celebrates things like, I saw a triple rainbow, or I saw, a dust devil, a dust devil. So she saw 7 dust devils in one day. So she put it on her calendar. Well, anyone else would say that's crazy, but to her it was like, I saw 7, and she gets so excited about it. It doesn't matter if it means anything to anyone else. 7 dust devils for her was amazing, and I think that's the point of that book, and the point of that you're
Mhm.
trying to make is your celebrations are your celebrations, no
Mhm.
matter what anyone says about it. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing, but it can be. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be celebrate in a small way, but it can be. It could be an enormous sheet. I mean, she could have had a feast for 7 dust devils, right?
Yeah.
In one day. And I think that's the beauty of I just want to say take a moment for honoring Jillian and the work that she does. I feel very honored to be sitting beside her because she brings an awareness to the world that may sometimes not be embraced. But if you really take a moment to feed upon it and digest it and really look at what your maybe your resistance could be to some things that are said, even if it seems way out of the norm. Just take a look at it. It doesn't mean that you have to embrace what someone else is saying, but just take a look at it, which is what you were saying earlier about the education, right? Educate yourself and see if it's a good fit for you. At least
Mhm.
challenge, question, right?
Question.
We taught not to question.
Yeah.
Don't question that because what? XYZ will happen. I mean, just
Mhm.
be questioning. It helps your discernment so much. So thank you for letting me
It
take a
does.
minute to.
It does. Yeah. Um, don't, yeah, the more that you are willing to break out of the box, the more that everyone is willing to.
Yeah, you're
And
giving
so,
others permission.
yeah, and that's something that for me, I've had to just choose as part of my journey that
Mhm.
I'll go first,
Mhm.
right? And if many more of us were to just say that, I'll go first, then none of us are really having to go first. Then all of us are really doing this as a more collective thing. So, but that's kind of been my motto, is me first, and it has to do with what is the truth and what is my authentic passion, and then staying true to that and not being afraid of what everybody else thinks. Although I will tell you, I would be lying if I didn't care what other people thought.
Right.
What the difference is I care what people think and I do it anyway.
Exactly. I have one little more point because I did this ropes course. And one thing I learned is I'm usually a go second kind of person, right? And Joe and I wanted, always wanted to jump out of an airplane. And so when I met Joe, I go, I really want to jump out of an airplane, but I want you to go first. And because I learned, that's how I learned. And then there was this opportunity on the ropes course where I said, I want someone else to go first, and I missed my opportunity.
Mm.
And so I just wanted to say, sometimes not being a me first, you might miss an opportunity of learning or growth or discernment. I mean, yes, the opposite's true too. Sometimes you get slapped around a little bit, but the whole point of this podcast for today was, what did I learn? Each time I go first, or
Mm.
each time I make an entrance into jumping in, I learn something from me that helps me grow and then expand. And
Mm.
I'm hoping my last day, I'm pretty sure my last day will be my best day, because I will have fully grown into my expansive self.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's also some gray in going first
Mhm.
because, um,
There's unsurety.
well, and I also think that I'm not truly the first one, right?
No, this
There's
is true.
there's so many that have done these things
Mhm.
before me. But in my collective group, my known group, I may be the first. But this is the beauty of all the books that I get to read is I get to see the women who have gone first, truly gone first.
Shoulders.
And if you go back in history, you'll see more women who truly are astounding to me because I think I got it bad sometimes when a few people
Mhm.
call me crazy. Well, there's been some women that have been burned at the stake for for being a little different.
Jailed. Yeah,
Um,
jailed.
yeah, so
Executed.
but it's not truly a going first. It's really being on a very narrow path.
Mhm.
it's being,
The road not
one
taken.
of a few people who have chosen to do something different. And then, sometimes that catches on and you pass that baton and you light someone else's candle and you never know when you have those opportunities to do it. But one of my very favorite quotes is lighthouses don't run around looking for ships to save. They just stand there shining.
Oh,
And
I
it's
love that
been
one.
a huge lesson for me because my job is not to cram down, whatever I think is truth down somebody else's throat. My job is to live it. And
Mhm.
anyone who wants that truth will be attracted to it.
Mhm.
And I think that that's true for any of us.
Perfect. Perfect metaphor.
Yeah. All right. We are over time. I apologize for getting lost in the moment.
Oh, it was wonderful.
But yes, next time we'll go more into ritual and we will talk more about how to celebrate your new self and maybe even making that an annual tradition. Making something, celebrating the new person, the new chrysalis that you've had over your years. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. Um, I didn't say this nearly enough through this episode, but please like, comment, share, do all the things if you liked what you heard here, because that is how we grow. That is how someone else gets to hear what we have to say and join the conversation. And we'd love very much for you to join the conversation. So please do give us a little love. And also, if you have any questions, you have any comments, you'd like to disagree or agree with us, you can do so by emailing me at defytheaverage@gmail.com or Marie.
Marie@mariesgold.com. Yes.
Yeah, we would very much love to hear from you. And we are here every Thursday morning, depending on your time zone. For us, it's around 10 a.m. Mountain Time. But please join us every Thursday morning here at Braveheart Conversations. And am I missing anything? You can find us on our Facebook group, Braveheart Conversations. You can find any of our past episodes there and join the community. So that's another option for you as well.
And Podbean and Spotify
Yeah,
and
lots of different
iTunes. Yeah.
podcasting platforms that we are on for sure. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the beautiful weather we're having right now. Enjoy that wonderful 70 degrees out with the crisp autumn leaves and colors. So enjoy, and we will see you all again next week. We love you all. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.